I'm ALIDA RAYNOR, and I have invented a new patented kind of yarn which creates a color pattern as you knit the work without you having to change colors. There are many variations to my yarn. I call my yarn Raynish Yarn Mosaics. This is my favorite variation. This is loop yarn. And the reason it's my favorite is because it's very easy to use. It's even easier to use than split yarn. It creates a nice loose project. Unlike when you have double knitting, depends on the size of yarn that you're using. With this yarn, you can do any stitch that you can with regular yarn. So with some of my other variations of my yarn, you're kind of restricted to using only a specific kind of stitch. For example, with my split yarn, if you're trying to do an increase or a decrease or any other kind of stitch other than your basics knit and purl, you're gonna have a hard time, and or it's not going to show very well on the product because the stitches are different than normal. But with loop yarn, yes, you can see loops when it's not knit up, but when you knit it up, you're pulling those loops through because you're going to create a loop with the yarn anyway. The only difference is that because each loop is secured, it's not going anywhere. So your stitches aren't going to slip. You're going to have your beautiful color work pattern with no hardship to you, no color changes, and you can do any kind of knit stitch that you want to. There's much more freedom as a knitter to do a variety of stitch patterns. So all that you do is, if you're at a long part, you're going to knit with the long part. There's that beautiful blue coming up. And if you're at the loop part, you're going to knit with the loop part. So you throw the loop onto the needle. And there's your gray. So as you probably know, double knitting is knit, purl all the way across. So I'm going to go into the first stitch. I grab my next stitch like this, that way I can throw one side of my split over the needle for a knit and use the other side of that same split for the purl stitch. Now the way I've designed this particular yarn, you have your purl side, which is not as pretty, and then you have your knit side. If I had designed this particular skein of yarn with different color patterns, then I could have created a two-sided double knit pattern. So I could achieve the same end result as this split yarn with this loop yarn. So as always, if you're interested in creating this yarn, contact me.